everybody. This is Michelle.
And this is Julie. How are you today, Michelle?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're recording a little bit on a different schedule today.
Yeah.
But we did get the bones for the pups so we can keep them quiet.
Hopefully.
I've
got one on my knees right now.
Anyway, it's been a crazy, crazy week. We had so much going on because we had our friend Mary Beth in town. So I got to see the Ed Sheeran concert.
I know. You guys were just busy the whole time she was here.
Yeah, we had something going on almost. She had a lot of people that she had to see.
Reader's Digest version was Ed Sheeran, Macklemore.
Oh my gosh.
Mud facials, Day at the Lake. I don't even know what else.
A few cocktails.
Yeah.
Some brunch. Things like that.
They were just like always doing something.
Yeah,
So
we were up really, really late. And so it was kind of really fun to sleep in. I don't sleep in like that anymore. But now I'm finding that I got to get back on my regular schedule so I'm not staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Do you think guys do that kind of shit?
What do you mean?
Like when they hang out? Do you think guy friends that haven't seen each other for a long time, do you think they're like...
They probably go golfing or
stay
something.
Up late and sleep in and go have brunch. And
It's definitely a girl thing, right? It's a girl vibe for sure.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, just adore her. And we've known each other for, since we're in our 20s. So we've known each other a good almost 40 years, 35, 40 years.
Yeah.
I can't even believe I can say that.
I know, right? It is weird.
It is.
Yeah, I say that about my friend Penny too. It's like, oh my gosh, we've known each other for like 45 years.
Yeah. And you can just pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about it. It's like we chit chat, we text a lot and, keep each other apprised of what's going on. But I mean, I haven't seen her in almost 3 years.
We did an episode about this, didn't we? Like female friendships.
We did an episode about
your
female
tribe.
and your tribe. Yeah. Finding your tribe. Yeah. That was a fun one. That was one that Amelia did with us.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
We're going to dive a little bit into the relationships of the familia.
Oh, geez.
Specifically, the relationships that adult children have with their parents.
We're not speaking about ourselves, though, of course.
We're not speaking about ourselves.
Because I would be talking for a really, really long time if it was me.
Well, I think, too, as I was going through this and gathering some of the notes, there's a lot of different aspects in regard to some of this stuff. It's not just about, if you have a good relationship with your parents or not, and what is that as an adult,
Well, what is it to you? I mean, do you feel like your mom is kind of knowing about the all aspects of your life?
Well, and that's the thing is, do we share all aspects of our life? I think there are some people that are able to do that and some that aren't, depending on circumstances of childhood and growing up and what the household was like.
Right.
What the father-mother relationship was like that you were part of, all of those different kinds of things and how they parented.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
So now we're talking about being an adult and how your relationship differs and really how it can flourish or not flourish as an adult because you're dealing with potential baggage that you've had from growing up, I suppose.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with it too.
Right.
Along with many other things.
I mean, I just think of some of this as a parent.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm putting myself in, some of these. My kids don't want me to know everything about their life.
I don't know that I want to know everything.
Yeah, and I don't know that I want to know everything. Just like my mom, it's hard to think of a 90, she's going to be 96 this year. So I don't know that she thinks much about it, but actually I know she thinks a lot about her kids.
Well, she has a few of them.
Just 8. Yeah, I guess 8 was enough.
8 was enough, definitely. And then, I have 3 kids in my family. And so obviously we're all adults now. My dad's gone, but my mom is still here. And so, there's definitely things that we will talk about here today that can resonate certainly with me. But I think what we want to get out there to everybody is that it's really not unusual to have, some kind of issue with your communication style or what you do, where your parents are concerned, because even though they're adults and you're adults, the relationships are changing as they get older.
Yeah, those can be difficult dynamics to move through.
Well, I know now, as I can speak from my own perspective, as we age, or like I said, our parents age too. And so the roles kind of reverse. And so the conversations are very different, I think, than they maybe were before. But in hindsight, growing up, I can speak from, again, my own experience, but I sure as hell didn't share the vast majority of
Right.
things. It's not like there was horrible things or anything, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's like if my kids told me some of the stuff that they've done, they'd tell me now, but if they told me then, I'd probably have a heart attack,
Right. I mean, I can think of many circumstances where as a parent, I did want to know, though I probably didn't want to know. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I did want to know what was going on in their life. And I have boys, so I know that can be a little bit different.
It's definitely a different type of relationship than you have with a daughter, or at least for me. My boys are open to me. I feel like, well, as open as probably more open than I would expect, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that's true about your boys.
Yeah, but my daughter, I mean, Zoe, it's like, I mean, there's definitely stuff she doesn't want me to know, but that girl has
smarter.
She's smart, and that girl has all my passwords. I can't hide anything from her. I swear, it's hilarious.
Well, you guys do business stuff together.
Yeah,
so,
we do. But
yeah.
she keeps track of me. But it's as she's grown older, she's become more like an adult in some respect. She's an adult when she needs to be.
Yeah,
she's an adult when she wants to be, but she still needs her mama.
Yeah.
So if you had a difficult relationship with one of your parents, when you were younger, how do you think that might play into things as an adult?
Well, I think it definitely carries over into that for sure.
Resentments, things of that nature?
For certain.
And a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily come out until there is some heated debate or heated argument or something takes place that is controversial.
Yeah.
And people are not in agreement on, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I think too, as you grow up and start being able to reflect on hindsight,
yes,
you probably also identify a lot of similarities, and things and situations and feelings become very familiar as a result. And it kind of brings that back, which, like I said, it's going to carry on over into that adult relationship.
Yeah, and it will go full circle in some respects, probably with your own children. I just think about, kids who have grown up in homes where there was corporal punishment, for example, or severe restrictions, or they were belittled or treated poorly or told they were fat, or whatever. Right. I mean, I know that stuff happens.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, that stuff definitely happens, where obviously kids are physically abused or they could be emotionally abused. And so you kind of grow up into an adult, and if you don't break the cycle, you probably start doing some of the same things, with your own children. But then how do you handle those relationships with the parents? Do you forgive that behavior, even though it's kind of formed you in a lot of ways?
I would imagine in order to carry on with your own life, you would have to come to some kind of forgiveness to be able to.
Well, that's where, again, going back to being an adult, we see things in our parents. When we were kids, they're kind of scary sometimes, or, they know everything. We think they know everything. And as we get older, we realize that they really don't. And they make a ton of mistakes, just like we do. But some of the mistakes can be irreversible in how they might handle things, or what they might do, or decisions they make, on how they choose to discipline. I keep going back to discipline. I don't know. Maybe it's because the hot sauce in my mouth constantly when I was a kid.
Oh, did you get that?
Yeah. My mom's from Peru. So she knows how to make the hot sauce.
Right.
And she would make it as hot as you could make it, because that's the way
she
dad
made
liked
a batch when I was over at her house one time.
Did she?
Oh, yeah. For Andrew.
Oh, for Andrew. Yeah. He likes it super hot. But that stuff is what they used to put in my mouth when I would get in trouble. And so I think that might be why I have an aversion to spicy hot food.
Oh, interesting. I never thought about that with you.
You think I would have learned the first time. Yeah,
you would think.
Yeah, or grow to like it, something like that. But that was definitely a punishment. And so now I see it, and I'm just like, oh God, that brings back memories.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of punishment there. Or when I say punishment, it's like really, it's kind of like putting soap in your mouth. Like you used to hear that when we were kids. It's like, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. It's kind of that, but I'm going to wash your mouth out with hot sauce.
Hot
Same
sauce.
thing.
Whew.
Hot sauce. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't like that stuff now.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Never have. I
think an example of some of the things that carry on over into adulthood, like I was mentioning, would be if you remember as a child, it didn't seem like your parents really cared what you had to say.
Mm-hmm.
You maybe felt this disinterest or...
Well, they're preoccupied.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done it before.
I know.
That's where...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Or they say, yeah, I'll get to that. Or yeah, I'll do that or whatever. And they're preoccupied. I can totally know that that's something that, I've done with my own kids because you've got a lot on your plate or you're overwhelmed or whatever.
And I think, and to be fair, for the parents, us having been one and still are, we're always expected to show that unlimited love and interest in your child or your children, which that comes naturally, but it can also, to a certain degree, depending on what you got going on in life, it can be overwhelming.
But does it come naturally to everybody?
Well, yeah. See, I'm just speaking, I guess, thank you, because I'm speaking from my own experience. I feel like it should come naturally, but you're right. It doesn't always.
I mean, can you tell if someone doesn't have a maternal instinct or a paternal instinct? You really can.
Yeah, you can tell.
Just the level of interest or what they're involved in or...
Your dog, Harlow, has no maternal interest.
She has zero interest in being a mother.
But yes, for people, I think you definitely can tell.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people end up having children because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And I've noticed more as, we've had discussions with people or, people that are our age or maybe younger because they might be in the childbearing years or, child rearing years, that they're okay now just saying, I just don't think it's right for me.
Yeah.
And I respect that.
Yeah.
Because there's people who have had children, even though that's really not maybe what they wanted. And I think the children, are the ones that are going to end up suffering because they don't have... There's a level of indifference maybe that they notice in, just throughout the day.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah. Indifference is a very, very dangerous thing because it can create a lot of problems within relationships, but also really impact the self-esteem of the person who is in that situation with a parent. The parent, on the flip side of that, I would say a parent can definitely feel the same way. Their feelings can be very hurt by their adult children if they feel their adult children are really indifferent towards their needs or not listening to them or taking over for them without really asking their feedback on things. I know my mom has run into that before where she said, you guys didn't even ask me.
Yeah.
And, we're doing what we think is right a lot of the time, but she's absolutely right.
Yeah. I
mean, there's never really a decision, and if she's coherent, which she definitely is, that really should be made without her blessing or input, if it's affecting her.
Right.
But yeah, we've done that before. And believe me, she does not let us forget it either. So
I think too, as you get older, when your parents, I'm sure parents can tend to still treat you like you're a child because you are their child. I mean, I am my mom's child.
But does she treat you like a kid?
She doesn't treat me like a kid, but she always, she always says, you'll always be my baby because I was the youngest, even now. Well,
I find it's very difficult for me to kind of separate myself, like with my own kids, because I have a huge tendency to mom them or people that I feel like need momming.
Well, and what's crazy is I do notice, when I go home, and even if it's just me and my mom or when I'm home with family, I do tend to find myself falling back into that being the baby.
Yeah.
Even though we're all adults, it's not like I'm sucking my thumb in the corner and you know what I mean?
There's a definite pecking order though.
But I do find myself wanting to be that spoiled baby. And
I was over the other day at my mom, she was saying, why don't you just come? I was tired. I don't know what it was. I was tired or something. Why don't you just take a nap here and then I'll just baby you?
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, you're 90 years old. You're not going to baby me. That's the last thing you should be doing right now,
Yeah.
So,
but I do like that though. That's why I say when I go home, I find myself doing that. But my mom lives 5 hours away. It's a trek, it's a travel, it's an intentional trip. So I definitely like it when she cooks for me, and she still does. She still does that.
They love it too.
Yeah, I know.
They really love that too.
Yeah.
But having conversations with them, I'm finding it's very different. There's like, I'll try to explain things like, let's just talk like the podcast for an example. I was explaining about the podcast and what we're doing, and she doesn't really understand what a podcast is. So I was trying to explain to her, because she's not on social media, she's not on email even. You know, she's really kind of disconnected from anything that is a virtual world. So a podcast is a total foreign concept to her. But just explaining, you know, that there's different topics and what we talk about, and we record at home, you know, just kind of going through the whole thing. But I don't know if she would ever want to listen to it.
Right.
And I don't know if there's some of it. I mean, I don't think there's anything that she couldn't hear, but she might not like what she hears, you know, especially when we're talking about different topics that they don't necessarily jive with.
Right.
Like when like the sex toy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mom was going to listen to the podcast, and your first thing you say is, "Oh my God, I hope she does not listen to that one."
I don't know. Yeah. She does have an Alexa, and so she did figure out how to say, Alexa, play a blonde or brunette and a Mike podcast.
Yeah. So she'll get the most recent episode unless she asks for
She's
something else.
She's not going to go searching.
That's good. So do you think that when children grow into adults, the resentments that they have directly impact how they view their parents if they haven't done the work to figure out how to forgive them?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think that might manifest?
Well, wow, that's a loaded question.
I'm thinking about, I don't know why I keep going back to corporal punishment, but I keep thinking about that because, again, our era is different than the era of our parents. And then they were raised in a very different way. So, you know, it was very common to spank, for example. You don't really see that as much now. I mean, I did get spanked, but my dad kind of stopped spanking me when I got to be 12 or 13 because I was a young woman at that point, you know. So then I just got restricted all the time. But I can recall one time when my oldest Andrew, I think he was about 9, was there at their house, and Andrew was popping off. Who knows what he was doing? And my dad slapped him. Oh. And when I found out, I hit the roof. I was so pissed. I'm like, who the hell do you think you are touching my child like that? You know, and he felt like it was totally fine for him to do that for whatever reason, you know, and that was so not okay with me. But again, that's how he was raised. Right. And that is what happened with him, probably with his parents. You know, it was very a situation when he was growing up where that probably did happen. I don't know. I never knew my grandfather. So I think on those things now, and I wonder, you know, if my dad was here today, would I have an open relationship like I could speak with him about things that would make me vulnerable or make me, you know, where there was the possibility that he could say, I told you so, but he wouldn't do it. And I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would have that type of a relationship because he would say, I told you so. Yeah. Or you dug your own grave, or, you know, or whatever. My conversations were pretty one-sided. Okay. They weren't really conversations. I would just listen to what they had to say. Yeah. And I remember lying to my parents about where I was going. Okay. I went to an R-rated movie. Ooh. And it was for Halloween. Went to an R-rated movie, told my parents we were going to a haunted house. Got to school Monday, wrote in a note to my friend, everything. Lied to my mom and dad. They thought I was doing, it was you were all so proud of yourself in the note, right? And it was probably like almost a month later. Oh no. I came home from school and my mom had cleaned my room. It was like all spotless. And my bed was all nice and made. And there on my pillow was this little note. Oh, boy. Red-handed. Oh, my gosh. That she had come across the note and how disappointed she was. Oh, my gosh. I felt the worst. Did you get like in trouble? No, I mean, I didn't get grounded or anything. I just, theirs was like the guilt way. Yeah. I mean, I felt bad enough
and I just remember crying and all of that.
So do you think generationally that the communication style has been more passive aggressive? Like when people get angry, like older people,
yeah, for sure.
Like when you're talking about, and I know other people's parents and stuff too, but it's like nobody seems like they're very direct about what's on their mind or what's bothering, or even just like sitting down and having a conversation about something seems like it's not really common.
Even just about normal stuff.
Yeah.
I actually, somebody was telling me about this today, this situation in their family, not even a situation, but the mom, she had made these like liners out of fabric for like in between pans. She had this really nice pots and pans. And so they were like these fabric liners that you could put in between so that they wouldn't get chipped. Right. And so this person asked their mom, hey, do you think you could make some of those for us? We really like those, blah, blah, blah. And then ends up the sister calls these people and says, hey, mom wants to she needs some money for that fabric, instead of the mom just saying to them, I can make some for you. Do you think I can get
I'll let
some
you know
money
how much the fabric is.
or whatever, but it went from, the mom to the sister and then the sister to the brother. And then
they feel bad, because it's kind of like, oh my gosh, she felt like she couldn't say anything to me.
Right. It's just even little things like that.
Yeah.
I think in family situations and dynamics.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's what that's what I've kind of noticed is that things that have happened in the past, people say they're in the past, but maybe they're not. And so they hold resentments and grudges.
But like back to your loaded question, in those kind of instances, I would imagine, I can't think of anything off the top, but if something traumatic or very memorable happened in your childhood or whatever, and there was never resolved with that, that's going to carry over.
Yeah,
for sure.
Do you think, you don't have to answer this on your personal level, but do you think that parents, generally speaking, have favorites?
Yes.
Okay. I do too.
I'm pretty sure I'm
probably because I'm not the favorite.
I'm just kidding. That's funny because I bought her a coffee mug
that said
that. I can't remember specifically what it said, but I just gave it to her this last Christmas. That it said, don't tell anybody else. But it's when you tip the cup up, it says, I'm your favorite or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't have gotten that mug from my mom. I don't know, but I do. I think that and so we have our own children, right? And so they say that too.
Yeah.
Well, so-and-so's your favorite. They're the golden child.
Right.
They're this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, the one that needs me really the most is the one that's my favorite at that moment.
I was going to say, and it's not a specific favorite one, but to your point, yes, I think that there are circumstances in life and things happen to where you're giving more attention. I mean, I'm kind of going through some things right now, and where I'm asking brothers about their brother, and then I'm like, I don't want it to seem like he's the only one I'm thinking about right now.
Well, so you're having to get information third hand. Well, if any of them don't talk as much as your youngest, then you're really screwed because that kid does not speak.
Yeah, he's pretty quiet.
He's pretty quiet. Yeah. So how do you feel about relationships, like parental? When I say child, I'm talking about like our age, right? We're the children.
Adult children.
Yeah. But if the conversations, they never end well. Like if there's obviously a lot of unresolved issues or something. So if a conversation doesn't end well or the main topic has not been resolved, I mean, it's like people walk away from those and they feel like shit. And so how do you even fix that?
I don't know.
When you're talking different communication styles.
I have to think, I know people who unfortunately struggle with that don't have good relationships and walking on eggshells because they don't even want to start a conversation or bring something up because it never ends good.
Yeah.
And I think the best way would be and I can only think of this in just a circumstance with anybody where that happens that you care about, is just to kind of walk away, You
mean keep the peace?
Yeah.
So basically don't
I mean, that's
speak.
Me.
Yeah.
I know.
No. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think there are circumstances where you certainly are going to be in a better position if you don't.
It's just for me that energy can be so toxic.
Yeah.
In circumstances such as that. And I can think of, not that it's a comparison, but, times, or like I said, any conversation that you might have like that with somebody you're in a relationship with.
Right.
Whether it's your husband, your parents, your children,
right,
whatever it is.
So if you walk away from conversations with your parents, for example, and you have that kind of like gut punch, nauseous feeling, it's not kind of feel like it's not necessarily something that can be resolved in, in a maybe a more traditional way, because there's such deep-seated angst there. That's
why it would have to be a walk away from type of situation, I would imagine.
Well, that's kind of what I've tried to do, tried to just keep the peace. And that's really not how I am normally. But it's like when you look at the bigger picture and you're not going to be able to solve the problem, there's not really much that you can do to make it better.
Well, and that's where you have to protect your own sanity, if you will.
Yeah.
And your own energy. I think that's okay to have to walk away, because I think it's important to protect your own sanity. And set those boundaries, if you will, for yourself.
So if you think about boundaries being set, okay, going back to we're in our 50s and we have parents, or there's plenty of people that are listening that are 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, but they've already been through a lifetime with their parent that they haven't necessarily set boundaries in. And so now you walk into this 30 years into your life and say, I'm going to start setting some boundaries. That's probably not going to be well received, I would think. So does it create more tension, more animosity, with that particular person in your family, or is it healthy? I don't know. That's where I struggle a little bit, because I think boundaries are good. Sometimes this is me just feeling guilty half the time, but I think sometimes I feel bad about setting those boundaries because I feel like I'm being selfish.
It probably depends on how you go about setting them. And it could be in a way that the other person isn't even aware that you're setting a boundary,
right? But
you go about it in a way that is going to be okay for you.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be in a position where you're going to be, hurtful to the, to your mom or your dad. And you don't want to disappoint them. I mean, I don't care how old we get. We do not want to disappoint our parents.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to disappoint them. I probably do I make decisions now and I don't really think about it as much as I used to, just like, for example, dating. Let's talk about dating. It's like there was a circumstance where I was dating someone and he was Black, and that was hilarious to see my mom navigate through that.
Oh, yeah.
And she just was surprised and she just was hoping it wasn't going to stick. But wasn't encouraging, didn't ask about him, didn't invite him over. I mean, she was kind of rude, to him. I mean,
didn't really acknowledge it.
No, was really very, and that's happened before in the past, that just pretend like nothing's happening, pretend like that person's not there, all that. To me, that's hurtful.
Right.
And it's hurtful to me, but it's also really disrespectful to the person if that's the case. So that's just one example I can think of. What if you have a major problem or something? Do you think people chat about those things with their parents?
It's interesting because I think there are those that do. Certainly. There are those that have wonderful relationships with their parents, and, that's great. I personally talk more to my sisters.
Okay.
I don't necessarily talk to my mom or my parents. It's just like that.
Why do you think that is?
Because I don't want to disappoint them, back to what you just said.
Yeah.
Especially if it could be so many things. I guess in the back of my mind, and I'm thinking back on when I was younger and married and just moving through life, I just wanted them to think I had everything under control. Knew what I was doing.
I know. I don't want people like coming at me. I don't want them coming at me and worrying about me.
Yeah.
I want to try to figure things out. I know there's, I can think of a couple of different people who I know where we've had conversations about those parental relationships, and, they were very cautious about what they said because they didn't want things to be turned around on them.
Right.
And when you talk about the communication style of people who are from a different generation, and we're obviously speaking very generally, but it can be more punitive, I suppose. Kind of you didn't follow their guidance, or follow their recommendations or tell them what was going on. So they're upset because you didn't include them. But if you are in a situation where that's taking place, it's like, I know there's these people I'm thinking of that were worried about, whatever they shared in that kind of vulnerable moment would be used against them at another time. So they just would choose not to. Or maybe they did one time and then they went, oop, not going to do that again.
Yeah.
And, I think keeping things kind of more on the surface it's less painful.
What's crazy probably less painful, but I'm sitting here listening to you thinking about how I am with my children. And I would totally want them to I would want them to feel like they could come to me about anything.
Right.
About anything. That's something like unconditional love, no judgment. I've used those words to my kids because I just really want to make sure that they can feel that way with me, but I know they're not going to.
I mean, if push comes to shove, they will.
But, yeah, if push comes to shove in certain things. But I say that knowing that I wouldn't go to my parents knowing that I know as a parent, you feel that way. Not all parents do, I'm sure, but I know.
And I think the relationships are, like you said, different. More traditional type relationships are kept more, I wouldn't say formal, but you keep it more on, I would say, on the surface. Or if you're getting into things, it's not like having a conversation with your buddies. And
I think part of it too is you don't, like I said, I don't want to disappoint them, but I don't want them to worry either, which I'm sure is the case.
Right.
Like with my kids, they don't want me to worry about all the shit they got going on.
Yeah. But I mean, like I'm seeing with mine, it's like I talk to them about a lot of different things. And when you look at your adult relationships with your kids or your adult relationship with your parents, I think they're so different because we look at things maybe a little bit differently.
Sure.
I mean, we've grown up with our parents' influence and their guidance and everything. And then if we're independent people, we may have our own views on things that are very different than what their views are because our experience has been different, our exposure's been different. And sometimes that is a big clash.
Yeah, my brother's been really great about bringing topics to the forefront with my mom.
Really?
And has very colorful conversations with her, which really is great.
Yeah.
He has no problem.
Not controversial.
Did I say colorful?
You said colorful. No, I mean, when you say colorful, do you mean like controversial or do you mean
I think a lot of different, a lot of different topics, political, religious. He doesn't dive too deep because my mom gets kind of quiet and,
right.
I don't think we necessarily need to be afraid of that.
No, I don't think so either. And someone's got to bring that stuff up, right?
I know, right? Yeah.
So I was telling you, I had a conversation with my mom last night and we disagreed on something. And then she's never done this before. I've seen her do it to other people. She goes, you know what? You're absolutely right. You're always right. You are right. Okay, I'm going to go now. Good night. I mean, it was just like, okay, I guess we're going to agree to disagree on that one. But I just thought it was kind of funny because that's her way of just saying, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
I can remember doing that with my boys, with their dad. When I remember in similar situations, my boys with their dad, if he was going off about something, and probably discipline or whatever, and he was going on. And I would look at the boys and I would tell them, just agree.
Right.
Just say, okay.
Because any kind of pushback is going to make it be worse.
It going and going and going. I'm like, just say okay and agree.
I always had to get the last word in.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I don't know what that was all about, but it's like, I mean, I got on restriction for weeks because of it. Like I had to have the last word. And so then I would just keep getting at it a week. It was that kind of thing. So
I could so see that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a good kid. I was just kind of, I don't know, bullheaded, admittedly so.
Nothing wrong with that.
So I guess it's fine that we, obviously disagree, but even just having the conversations, you think, I've heard people say you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family.
You can't, yeah.
And it's very true. So you may have, siblings or, parents or what have you that you just don't jive with. It doesn't mean you don't love them any less. And,
right.
You just don't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of things. That just happens, I wonder if some of that has to do with like we were talking before about generations, it's like if you're a Gen Xer and you're dealing with someone who is the older version of the baby boomer, very, very different thought processes on topics.
Yeah.
I mean, very different topics, or just whether it could be money, or it could be religion, or it could be how you raise your children, or, spending too much money on a car because it's not practical,
like
or
all of those things.
Yeah, just things, very, very different ways of looking at things. And so I think sometimes it's just easier not to say anything at all.
I think being cognizant of the way you communicate with somebody, with your parents in those types of situations needs to be on the forefront, because how your tone is going to be
very, very, very true.
What you're probably going to be getting back.
Right.
So if you start to build up the defense and lashing out a little bit, it's probably what you're going to get back. So
that's very true. Yeah. Or you're going to get silence, just shut down.
Any of the things. If you're going to put out sarcasm, you're going to get sarcasm back. Yeah.
Very, very true.
Silence, you'll get silence.
So I think I look at this like this. I really do, Michelle. I try to understand, because I don't live in, obviously I'm talking about my mom. I don't live in my mom's shoes, but I know she's going through a lot, with just changes to her body and the idea of being almost 90, and just that her world is kind of small, because people have died and they're not around anymore. And, relationships that have been there maybe aren't there anymore. So there's a lot of angst, I think, on her part because of that.
Yeah.
So my eyes, my ears, my knee, my shoulder, I can't sleep. She's got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because it's like, I'm sure we're all going to be there someday. But I look at things, at least I try to look at things from a more optimistic point of view, which absolutely drives her insane. She cannot oh my God. Why are you always contradicting me and telling me to do things a different way, or maybe looking at it a different way? And I said, because there's always a positive aspect to everything.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe you can't walk that well, but you can walk. Maybe that's not the right example, but we just have very different ways of looking at things. But on the flip side of that, if I was the one that was feeling that way, I probably would be kind of bummed about it too. And I don't know. I haven't been in that circumstance yet. So I'm really hoping I can keep an optimistic point of view about things and really enjoy my life. And, you see a lot of people that are in their 80s and 90s and stuff kind of existing because they don't really have the relationships in their lives anymore, or they haven't developed them over time. And so things don't stay. There's no staying power to them. That's a whole nother topic. Well, and I think it's really can be challenging with your parents. Now we're talking about elderly parents,
but to try to open their vision to a different way of thinking, like you were saying, in regard to being more positive, or, just in the way that they do things.
Yeah.
And really, should we at that point be trying to change it?
Well, see, that's where I struggle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do you just buy into it?
Yeah.
Because it makes it very difficult to try to look at things optimistically or try to plan or whatever if we're looking at things from a cup half empty perspective.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe it is our job as the adult children to keep that positive vibe going.
Yeah.
So the life that they live can be a little bit more satisfying.
Yeah.
But I know it also encompasses having more time maybe with us. I don't know about you, but as I've gotten older, I really see the value in things that I just didn't even really pay attention to when I was raising a family or younger. Now I see the value in things that I didn't see then, sitting down and having that conversation and not trying to rush out or spending quality time. It's just a very different feeling now than it was then.
Well, you have more time to take the time.
Well, yes and no. The time's just spent differently.
Yeah.
I think is, at least for myself, that's what I see. But I've also, this is the other thing too. When you talk about communication and how we interact with a different generation, but they're people we love, our moms or dads or what have you. What do you think? Do you think there's any topics that should maybe stay off the table? Topics that would maybe stay off the table because it's going to create anxiety. It's going to create tension.
I think it probably depends on the dynamics of that relationship and some of the family dynamics as well.
Right.
Some of the situations from upbringing, there could be a whole lot of
factors that play into
that. Yeah, especially as adults. And I think, for example, like religion for me, we just don't talk about it.
Well, you did when you were younger. Now you kind of have a different perspective on it, but she's not holding that against you.
She doesn't hold it against me, but she doesn't ask.
Right.
She doesn't ask.
So it's kind of like the don't ask, don't tell generation.
Yeah, because she knows, like, I have no problem going to church with her or doing it. You know what I mean? And there's all that respect is there for part of life that we grow up with. But as far as if, she's never... So do you go to church, Shelley?
She doesn't ask.
She doesn't ask.
Well, I think
and
maybe
I don't tell.
That's part of experience, maybe, is not asking the questions that they don't want the answers to.
Right.
That would be kind of a valid point, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, what if you don't respect your parents?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole other thing.
I mean, that's going to be deep rooted, but it's like, even if you don't respect them, does that mean that you're disrespectful?
Right.
And I don't.
It doesn't have to necessarily.
No, I don't think you need to be disrespectful. We were talking about this before when we were talking about that topic of adultism, how sometimes parents, they don't even think about what their kids are saying, or it's that whole be seen and not heard kind of mentality where the kids are just kind of there and they're scared to make a noise or whatever. That seems very old school to me.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I mean, I don't really see that being something that you would run into as much nowadays.
Not as much now.
But definitely. But again, going back to trying to understand your parents, it's like they were raised in a completely different era and by parents who maybe had very different ideals than you do. And so those are the ideals that maybe have been instilled in them, but didn't transfer to you.
Yeah.
So there is a way to be respectful towards your parents, siblings, whatever, without necessarily agreeing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that respectful agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to solve problems because everybody has their own opinion. No one is going to probably deviate from that if it's a really strong topic. And so you just walk away with the understanding that we all look at things differently and leave it alone.
I can find myself getting a little mouthy with my siblings.
Yeah.
Specifically my sisters. No, just with my siblings sometimes. Yeah,
Well,
I'll be a little more outspoken than most of them, I think.
Is that because you're the baby?
Probably.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where you weren't like that when you were a kid?
No, maybe I was. I don't know.
Well, you pretty much didn't say anything. It sounds like you were pretty shy.
Yeah, I was.
Until you were 18. Woohoo!
Yeah, there we go.
Then she went crazy.
So in general, I think it is better to just stay away from touchy subjects if you know they're a little bit, if there's contention there,
right?
Underlying contention, just staying away from those topics, specifically when it comes to certain people or things that have been brought up in the past.
Right. That are unresolved issues. So you may have something that's unresolved, but to them it's resolved.
Right.
Well, it's not resolved if not everybody's on the same page.
It's like beating a dead horse.
Exactly. And so that's where you have to like kind of even just say it. You know what? We're never going to agree on this topic. I appreciate that you have your opinion. I have mine. And let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And then you just don't talk about it anymore. But at least it's out in the open and not something that everybody's pretending that is the elephant in the room that they don't want to talk about. I'm
just listening to us. I bring up beating a dead horse. I haven't really used that term. I've heard it. I know it. I've used it in my life, but I never really used that term. It's kind of like...
It's kind of awful.
It's kind of awful.
When you think about it.
Yeah. And you were talking about the dead elephant in the room.
Oh, no, it's not dead. It's not dead. It's just big.
Just the big elephant.
That everybody is ignoring.
Yeah, okay. I don't know why I heard dead, but yeah, I was
I'm not about dead animals.
That's why I brought it
about
up.
abusing animals.
We just talked about elephants and horses in one little
and
sentence.
we had dogs over here tippy tapping their way in too. My goodness. So let's just talk about a couple things we can do.
Okay.
If we find ourselves in those circumstances, because there is such a balance that has to be struck, between being an adult, being open-minded, but also having an opinion about something, and then kind of trying to decide where your boundary is with even having conversations about things that might be difficult, because it might not be worth it. It just might not be worth it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I've landed with some topics, is like, it's going to create more trouble to do that, and it's not going to create a benefit.
Right. The outcome.
The outcome.
Does the outcome, yeah.
Does the outcome measure up to the amount of anxiety and stress and hurtfulness that might come from having a conversation about something? That is only something that, you can do.
Right.
That's only something you can make a decision about. I know in every family, it's the way it is. You have those circumstances that come up, and a lot of the time it surrounds money, or it surrounds pecking order, or it surrounds abuse, or things that people don't want to talk about. And so people just let sleeping dogs lie. They just leave it alone. I think you mentioned this earlier, but it's like one thing you can take on yourself is really identifying how you speak to your parents.
Yeah.
And when I say how you speak to them is like, are you aggressive in nature? Are you sarcastic in nature? Are you evasive about a specific topic? Or do you just flat out ignore it? You really have to think about what your own communication style is in order to kind of blend into what's going on with them. Because the reality is we have more of an opportunity to adjust how we look at things than they probably do. And it's not to say because they're older that they aren't going to adjust their thinking, but let's just be real about it. It's just not going to be a priority.
Well, and I think too, something to consider is we're talking about this with parents that are, our moms that are still with us, are, in their 90s. But earlier on, I think the dynamics were, I'm just thinking about this, how they carry over from childhood into young adulthood and then into the midlife part and on into where we are now. So I think some of these things really are going to hit more to that young adulthood and midlife part of where we're at generationally. And some of these things I think that we're talking about are going to be more suited and more useful for those time frames.
Well, and again, it's kind of, in some respects, putting your own feelings aside and really trying to evaluate what is going to be the best.
Because I think there's more dialogue at that time. You know, when I was 30 and my mom was my age that I am now, you know. So that's why I'm thinking about me with my kids now. There's more that dialogue and these types of situations that are going to be out there that you can really kind of use some of this to your benefit.
No, I completely agree.
For those things. And being able to, decide how you're going to be treated within your family. If there are those touchy situations, I think is going to be something to really think about in handling them in the way that we were just talking about. Less is more. There's that whole saying. So
and so what happens, what happens with that is things stay very much on the surface. And so you have to be okay with that, just keeping things on that surface level, because the moment you dive a little deeper, then things start to unravel. Yeah.
And if you're finding yourself not speaking or avoiding having communication, I think that's a sign to really kind of check yourself, if you will.
Yeah.
And even if you're the one doing it, if you're sitting there waiting for each other, if you're waiting for your parents to check themselves and realize, or if you can just check yourself and realize.
Well, so a lot of people would think, well, it's disrespectful to think your parent is going to check themselves.
Well,
but here's the reality. I am a parent and I fuck up all the time.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like
same.
The difference is that I will tell them, you know what, you guys, I didn't make a good decision on this. I mean, I'll kind of own it.
I've had to do that.
Yeah.
I did not make some good choices there.
Yeah. And then they look at you like, wow,
I know.
She's actually human. She admits that she's got issues or she's making mistakes or what have you. I think they might appreciate that.
I was going to say, I think that's kind of a respect thing. That is a good thing to show your kids.
Yeah. It's not just letting them see one side of you.
Being humble and being able to admit when you have not necessarily made the best decisions.
Right. Another thing to really focus on maybe would be just trying to understand them. Like, no matter how hard it might seem to you, just understand that the way they approach things is completely different for a reason. It's not like they're trying to be difficult. It's not like it's happening just today. It's something that's developed over time and also directly relates to their relationship with you, not just how they learn to communicate, but how they have a relationship with you. I mean, if that's the way it is all the time, then if that's the way your dad's always talked to you, then it's probably not going to change.
Right.
And if you put up boundaries now, that's cool. You can do that, but just understand that it's going to be a little bit confusing probably unless you really speak about what the boundary is and why it's up.
Yeah.
And if they want to have a relationship with you, once you've established that boundary in a respectful way, then they can make a change to do that. But it's easy to say that because people are very stubborn. And then you can go for years and not talk to each other, and then everybody's dead, and then nobody had a relationship, and it just sucks.
Right.
But again, you may not really be in a position where you want to have a really strong relationship with the person who gave birth to you.
Right.
Or your dad or whatever, because you're in very different places.
Yeah.
Maybe they have drug problems and haven't gotten themselves under control. Maybe they drink. Maybe they're abusive still. Maybe they've got a new wife and they're abusive to them. Who knows? You know, it's like, so sometimes you just kind of have to remove yourself from the situation and feel like it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Set those boundaries.
Set those boundaries.
For your own self-sanity.
Yeah. And also when you're talking about trigger topics, people, what is going to be a trigger for you and it's different for everybody depending upon, again, your relationship with your folks, but there's going to be topics that might be helpful to just not discuss and just, you got to just bless and release the whole thing and just understand things aren't going to change. They're not going to be different. It is the way it is. I'm going to work with it. And
you can keep living life like you do.
Exactly. And put your coffee pot underneath the counter.
No, I left it on the counter.
Okay.
I left it on the counter. Remember, I didn't put it away.
Yeah. That's from another episode
that's when I was free.
Michelle was hiding her coffee pot from her parents. I think she was 35 when she was
like 40. 30s and 40s. The coffee pot always went under the cupboard.
Okay. People that haven't heard those other episodes, Michelle was raised Mormon and there's no coffee in her household. So when she was on her own, she decided to drink coffee and didn't really want her parents to know.
So I always put it underneath the cupboard when they would come and visit.
How do they feel about alcohol?
Same. Had to hide that too.
I love it. You had to hide that too.
Yeah.
So one might say it's probably always best to try to preserve some semblance of your relationship. And so kind of diving into things that are not going to be resolved or old tension, old topics that have never resolved is not going to help. And when you see people getting in arguments and things, those things are what come out. Yeah. Because they haven't been resolved. They haven't been checked.
Thankfully, now there are so many resources available to people for relationship differences in families, in couples, with parent-children relation, all of those things. There's so many resources now with counseling and therapy, and it's not always something that you can get through on your own. So it's really okay to,
You see me looking at you like,
go talk to a counselor or a therapist.
So generationally, I think that's an issue too.
Yeah.
Because I've had those conversations with people that are older and it's been like, why would I tell somebody that I don't even know my problems?
Yep, I know.
Why would I do that? And it's like, they're trained professionals.
Yeah.
They're there to help you kind of work through things.
It's just good to be able to talk it out loud. It's not necessarily to that person. Yes, that person is there, but just being able to say it all to somebody that's non-biased and that can maybe help you think about things differently.
Culturally, generationally, that is not.
It's different.
It is definitely not a sought after tool.
I know.
At least from what I can see. So I'm hoping that will change as our generation starts to get older and our kids start to get older. We're familiar with a lot of that stuff, so it might not be as big of a deal. But when I see, like, again, older baby boomers or even the greatest generation, people that are elderly, it's like their thought process on things is going to be very, very different. Yeah. And there's been so much change in this world since they were learning all those things. So
I think this was a good topic.
Yeah.
And
kind of gets me thinking.
A lot of different things that we covered here. I know it wasn't like so streamlined, but I think there are things that we all in some way, shape, or form have to deal with.
Absolutely. And I think walking away from this, when you're listening to this in your car or, you're having a conversation about this maybe with your sibling, understand that there's so many different components, your relationship with your parents, the relationship you have with your children, they're all unique and they all bring something really good and something maybe not so good, to the table. So you have to decide what you want to do, what you can live with, and what kind of relationship you want to have, with your parents if you are in a position to still have one.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you so much for bringing this topic up, Michelle.
Yeah. Thank you for chatting about it with me.
Yes, ma'am.
And thanks everybody for giving us your love out there on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
That's right.
And, we like to get those likes. So comment, share, and follow.
That's right. Well, have a good one, everybody. We'll chat with you soon.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.